All right, let's do a deep dive into this Wall Street Journal article, the rebuttals. We're going to be here for a while. So obviously, I'm assuming, I don't even know yet, but I'm assuming that you saw this video and you said, well, this is a longer video. I'm going to go through all this. I probably might even read this whole damn thing and then look at some of the rebuttals that came into it. Now, essentially, the gist of what I've been hearing about this article is that saying similar to things that what Ross Coldhart and other people were talking about, it might have been based off of this too, but that the government basically is making claims now that a lot of the stuff, UFO related, disclosure related, is disinformation, trying to push you away from the technology that we know and say, oh yeah, well, it must be aliens. And that's what this pretty much insinuates, this article. And obviously after this article has come out, many people have spoken against this article. So I figure the best thing that we're going to do is go through the article, read the article itself, discuss the article. And then after the article, we'll go through some of the rebuttals and other things that people are talking about. So here is the article itself. The Pentagon's disinformation that fueled America's UFO mythology. This is Joel Schechtman. A tiny Pentagon office had spent months investigating conspiracy theories about secret Washington UFO programs when it uncovered a shocking truth. At least one of those theories had been fueled by the Pentagon itself. The congressionally ordered probe took investigators back to the 1980s, where an Air Force colonel visited a bar near Area 51, a top secret site in the Nevada desert. He gave the owner photos of what might be flying saucers. Photos went up on the walls, and into the local lore went the idea that the U.S. military was secretly testing recovered alien technology. The colonel was on a mission of disinformation. The photos were doctored. The now retired officer confessed to the Pentagon investigators in 2023. The whole exercise was a ruse to protect what was really going on at Area 51. The Air Force was using the site to develop top secret stealth fighters, viewed as a critical edge against the Soviet Union. Military leaders were worried that the programs might be exposed if locals somehow glimpsed a test flight of, say, the F-117 stealth fighter, an aircraft that truly did look out of this world. Better that they believe it came from Andromeda. This episode, reported now for the first time, was just one of a series of discoveries that the Pentagon team made as it investigated decades of claims that Washington was hiding what it knew about extraterrestrial life. That effort culminated in a report released last year by the Defense Department that found allegations of a government cover-up to be baseless. In fact, a Wall Street Journal investigation reveals the report itself amounted to a cover-up, but not in the way the UFO conspiracy industry would have people believe. The public disclosure left out the truth behind some of the foundational myths about UFOs. The Pentagon itself sometimes deliberately fanned the flames in what amounted to the U.S. government targeting its own citizens with disinformation. At the same time, the very nature of Pentagon operation, an opaque bureaucracy that kept secret programs embedded within secret programs cloaked in cover stories, created fertile grounds for the myths to spread. These findings represent a stunning new twist in the story of America's cultural obsession with UFOs in the decades after a 1938 broadcast of H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds spread panic throughout the country. Speculation about alien visitors remained largely the province of supermarket tabloids, Hollywood blockbusters, and costume conferences in Las Vegas. More recently, things took an ominous turn when a handful of former Pentagon officials went public with allegations of a government program to exploit extraterrestrial technology and hide it from Americans. Those claims led to the Pentagon's investigation. Now, evidence is emerging that government efforts to propagate UFO mythology date back all the way to the 1950s. This account is based on interviews with 24 current and former U.S. officials, scientists, and military contractors involved in the inquiry, as well as thousands of pages of documents, recordings, emails, and text messages. At times, as with the deception around Area 51, military officers spread false documents to create a smokescreen for a real secret weapons program. In other cases, officials allowed UFO myths to take root in the interest of national security, for instance, to prevent the Soviet Union from detecting vulnerabilities in the systems protecting nuclear installations. Stories tended to take on a life of their own, such as the 3-decade journey of a purported piece of space metal that turned out to be nothing of the sort. And one long-running practice was more like a fraternity hazing ritual that spun wildly out of control. Investigators are still trying to determine whether the spread of disinformation was the act of local commanders and officers or a more centralized institutional program. The Pentagon omitted key facts in the public version of the 2024 report that could have helped put some UFO rumors to rest, both to protect classified secrets and to avoid embarrassment, the Journal investigation found. The Air Force in particular pushed to omit some details it believed could jeopardize secret programs and damage careers. The lack of full transparency has only given more fuel to conspiracy theories. Members of Congress have formed a caucus composed mainly of Republicans to examine unidentified anomalous phenomena, or UAP in bureaucratic speak. The caucus has demanded the intelligence community disclose which agencies are involved with UAP crash retrieval programs. MAGA skepticism about the deep state further feeds the notion that the government bureaucrats have been keeping those secrets from the American public. At a November hearing of two House oversight subcommittees, Nancy Mace, a Republican from South Carolina, cast doubt on the Pentagon's report. "I'm not a mathematician, but I can tell you it doesn't add up," she said. Sean Kirkpatrick, a precise spectral scientist who once spent years studying vibrations in laser crystals, was nearing retirement from government service when he received the call that would change his life. 2022, he had ascended to chief scientist at the Missile and Space Intelligence Center at the Redstone Arsenal near Huntsville, Alabama. As he sat at his desk at 6:30 one morning drinking coffee and skimming through intelligence reports he had come in overnight, his Tandberg desk phone, essentially a classified version of FaceTime, rang. It was a deputy undersecretary from the Pentagon who was putting on a tie as he told Kirkpatrick about a new office Congress ordered the department to set up to examine unidentified anomalous phenomena. The undersecretary and I put together a short list of who could do it, and you're at top, the official relayed, adding that they had settled on Kirkpatrick because he had both a scientific background and had built a half dozen organizations within the intelligence community. Is that the real reason Kirkpatrick countered, or am I the only one stupid enough to say yes? In short order, Kirkpatrick had the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office up and running, just the latest in an alphabet soup of special government projects set up to study UFOs stretching back more than a half a century. ARROW, as it is known, operated out of an unmarked office near the Pentagon with a few dozen staffers and classified budget. The mission fell into two buckets. One was to collect data on sightings, particularly around military installations, and assess whether they could be explained by earthly technology. Amid growing public attention, the number of such reports has skyrocketed in recent years to 757 in the 12 months after May 2023, from 144 between 2004 to 2021. ARROW linked most of the incidents to balloons, birds, and the proliferation of drones cluttering the skies. Many pilot accounts of floating orbs were actually reflections of the sun from Starlink satellites, investigators found. They are still examining whether some unexplained events could be foreign technology, such as Chinese aircraft using next-generation cloaking methods that distort their appearance. The office found that some seemingly inexplicable events weren't so strange after all. In one, a 2015 video appeared to show a spherical object buzzing past a jet fighter at almost an impossible speed. "Oh my gosh, dude," the pilot can be heard saying in the video, laughing. But later, investigators determined there was nothing much to see. Whatever the object was, the camera angle and relative speed of the jet made it appear to be going much faster than it was. The office's second mission proved to be more peculiar: to review the historical record going back to 1945 to assess the claims made by a dozen of former military employees that Washington operated a secret program to harvest alien technology. Congress granted the office unprecedented access to America's most highly classified programs to allow Kirkpatrick's team to run the stories to the ground. As Kirkpatrick pursued his investigation, he started to uncover a hall of mirrors within the Pentagon, cloaked in official and non-official cover. On one level, the secrecy was understandable. The U.S., after all, had been locked in an existential battle with the Soviet Union for decades, each side determined to win the upper hand in the race for ever more exotic weapons. Patrick soon discovered that some of the obsession with the secrecy verged on the farcical. A former Air Force officer was visibly terrified when he told Kirkpatrick's investigators that he was briefed on a secret alien project decades earlier, and was warned that if he ever repeated the secret, he could be jailed or executed. The claim would be repeated to investigators by other men who had never spoken of the matter even with their spouses. It turned out that the witnesses have been victims of a bizarre hazing ritual. For decades, certain new commanders of the Air Force's most classified programs, as part of their induction briefings, would be handed a piece of paper with a photo of what looked like a flying saucer. The craft was described as an anti-gravity maneuvering vehicle. Officers were told that the program they were joining, dubbed Yankee Blue, was part of an effort to reverse engineer the technology on the craft. They were told never to mention it again. Many never learned it was fake. Kirkpatrick found the practice had begun decades before and appeared to continue still. The Defense Secretary's office sent a memo out across the service in the spring of 2023, ordering the practice to stop immediately, but the damage was done. Investigators are still trying to determine why officers have misled subordinates, whether a sum of loyalty test, a more deliberate attempt to deceive, or something else. After that 2023 discovery, Kirkpatrick's deputy briefed Joe Biden's director of national intelligence, Avril Haines, who was stunned. Could this be the basis for the persistent belief that the U.S. has an alien program that we've concealed from the American people? Haines wanted to know. According to people familiar with the matter, how extensive was it, she asked. The official responded, "Ma'am, we know it went on for decades. We're talking about hundreds and hundreds of people. These men signed NDAs. They thought it was real." The finding could have been devastating to the Air Force. The service was particularly sensitive to the allegations of hazing and asked that Arrow hold off on including the finding in the public report, even after Kirkpatrick had briefed lawmakers on the episode. Kirkpatrick retired before the report was finished and released. In a statement, a Defense Department spokesman acknowledged that Arrow had uncovered evidence of fake classified program materials related to extraterrestrials and had briefed lawmakers and intelligence officials. The spokesman, Sue Go, said the department didn't include the information in its report last year because the investigation wasn't completed, but expects to provide it in another report scheduled for later this year. The department is committed to releasing a second volume of its historical record report to include Arrow's findings on reports of potential pranks and inauthentic materials, Goff said. A bunker in Montana. Kirkpatrick investigated another mystery that stretched back over 60 years. In 1967, Robert Salas, now 84, was an Air Force captain sitting in a walk-in closet-sized bunker, manning the controls of 10 nuclear missiles in Montana. He was prepared to launch apocalyptic strikes should Soviet Russia ever attack first, and got a call around 8 p.m. one night from the guard station above. A glowing reddish-orange oval was hovering around the front gate. Salas told Kirkpatrick's investigators the guards had their rifles down, pointed at the oval object appearing to float above the gate. A horn sounded in the bunker, signaling a problem with the control system. All 10 missiles were disabled. Salas soon learned a similar event occurred at the other silos nearby. Were they under attack? Salas never got an answer. The next morning, a helicopter was waiting to take Salas back to base. Once there, he was ordered never to discuss the incident. Salas was one of 5 men interviewed by Kirkpatrick's team who witnessed such events in the 60s and 70s. While sworn to secrecy, the man began sharing their stories in the 90s in books and documentaries. Kirkpatrick's team dug into the story and discovered a terrestrial explanation. The barriers of concrete and steel surrounding America's nuclear missiles were thick enough to give them a chance if hit first by a Soviet strike. But scientists at the time feared the intense storm of electromagnetic waves generated by a nuclear detonation might render the hardware needed to launch a counterstrike unusable. To test this vulnerability, the Air Force developed an exotic electromagnetic generator that simulated this pulse of disruptive energy without the need to detonate a nuclear weapon. When activated, this device, placed on a portable platform 60 above the facility, would gather When activated, this device, placed on a portable platform 60 feet above the facility, would gather power until it glowed, sometimes with a blinding orange light. It would then fire a burst of energy that could resemble lightning. Just a couple of the sketches there. The electromagnetic pulses snaked down cables connected to the bunker where the launch commanders, like Salas, sat, disrupting the guidance systems, disabling the weapons, and haunting the men to this day. But any public leak to the test at the time would have allowed Russia to know that America's nuclear arsenal could be disabled in a first strike. The witnesses were kept in the dark. To this day, Salas believed he was party to an intergalactic intervention to stop nuclear war, which the government has tried to hide. He's half right. The experience left the octogenarian deeply skeptical of the U.S. military and its ability to tell the truth. There's a gigantic cover-up, not only by the Air Force, but every other federal agency that has cognizance of this subject, he said in an interview with the Journal. We were never briefed on the activities that were going on. The Air Force shut us out of any information. Concealing the truth from men like Salas and deliberate efforts to target the public with disinformation unleashed within the halls of the Pentagon itself a dangerous force, which would become almost unstoppable as decades passed. The paranoid mythology the U.S. military helped spread now has a hold over a growing number of its own senior officials who count themselves as believers. The crisis grew to a boil over a piece of metal mailed to a late-night radio host in 1996, which the sender said they had been told was part of a crashed spaceship. Okay, so that's a lot and then some. So there's a lot that we'll cover that's said here first. And then I want to read something. There's a rebuttal from Robert Salas, who they mentioned in this at the very end here. I'll tell you where there's interesting stuff when you go, well, we've heard that type of thing, whether it's Lou Elizondo being an agent of disinformation, whether it's this person doing that, to throw these times out there to get the focus off of what we are actually developing, the things that we've actually discovered, make people think that it's otherworldly stuff and have enough, and keep pumping that out between years and years and years. We've heard that kind of stuff. And is it far-fetched? It isn't. It isn't. With the kind of details that they have there when they're saying, okay, look, these things have been put out there and told to these people and told them to be quiet about it. And hopefully maybe they do leak something to further the mystique and get the real eyes off of what is happening and go search for aliens. Sure. That's a possibility. The thing at the end when he talks about with Salas, about how that was set up and how there was these reports in general. The problem I have is the hard focus on Sean Kirkpatrick. Sean Kirkpatrick does not read like a trustworthy dude. His body language, the things that he says in general, I don't trust the guy. From the way that he talks, the way that he even spoke in general about anybody who was coming forward, it's like, even if you knew all this information, and even if you knew about this program, which you never mentioned it once, and any other thing too, because as they say in this article, well, because they had made a promise not to say anything because they didn't want this to come out. But with all the heat that was on Arrow, I don't know. And again, if you knew all that stuff and you didn't report it, just as bad. But it's still, even if you knew all that stuff and you had all that stuff and you realized that this information was coming out there, he treated all of these witnesses and other people that came forward, David Grush, whoever, like they were lying, like they were, you don't take them serious. Here's a LinkedIn post about it showing you why. And there was never well, look, I was the head of this thing and I'm supposed to talk to all these witnesses, people who had this service. And if they're being lied to because of this program, I know that they're being lied to about. I got to talk to them and let them know that this thing's been going on for a while, that this misinformation's been out there, and they should know that they're being lied to. They should know this stuff because that's your job as someone who's investigating. You figure all this stuff and you sit down and you have this conversation with the people that are coming forward to say, okay, well, look, just to let you know that this information has been out there, and we found out that this information has been out there. So what's the stuff that you heard? What did you sign? Is it similar to what this person did? Let's try to figure this out together. But something stinks. It's like, now it's like, oh yeah, guess what? They had this program. They had this thing. They had this thing that they did, and they just threw this information out there just to show, because we're working on some stuff, because they never tell you what it is, the stuff they're working on. So there's no national security problems here to going like, hey, guess what? This is technology that we have, and we want you to make things aliens. What's the technology? Don't worry about it. It's just technology that we have. They don't really say what the technology is. And then, as they mentioned in that report, the Robert Salas report, we've heard this many different times of why these things have been seen over nuclear facilities. The information and the way that they present this in this article, it's a compelling article. You have to say that the Wallstreet Journal article, it's a compelling article of the things that are said and the things that they heard, but I don't find it any different than the compelling arguments that are made that can make you believe that things are indeed alien NHI. There's nothing factual here. These are things that, again, he said that he discovered, he talked about, that people have told him. Well, people have told other people things that have been discovered, NHI, other things. Certain pilots don't agree with the assessment of the balloons, blinding lights that look to go too fast and all that. That's reports that he's getting from certain people. But I guess the argument could also be made, how do you know that those people aren't throwing that kind of disinformation to you to make this report? There's two ways to look at it. This article could be 100% factual and that this is indeed what is happening. But I don't think you can read it and go, oh, that's it. That's it. No, disclosure is that's BS. They just told you. Wallstreet Journal. They just told you. But it goes to my point that I make every day on this channel. When the Wallstreet Journal is covering this in the way that when the New York Times covered it, everybody listened. It's not just, the Daily Mail or whatever, not the Daily Mail, the Sun, or not even the Sun. Those ones, shitting on both of those. But what was the one with Bat Boy and all that stuff? Like those types of things. If it's that, no one pays attention to it. If it's Wall Street Journal, if it's New York Times, you go, wait a minute, what? So this is clearly getting a lot of press. Now, there's been rebuttals. Robert Salas had the rebuttal. He was mentioned in the article, and here's his rebuttal. America's UFO Mythology by Joel Sheckman and Aruna Viswanatha, published by the Wall Street Journal, June 6th. This is a rebuttal by Robert Salas. Since my name was mentioned in this article with respect to an incident I experienced when I was a Minuteman missile launch officer in a command of a launch control facility in Montana, designated Oscar 1 and false representations were made. I find it necessary to respond to those statements in the referenced article. The article on page 8 states that Mr. Sean Kirkpatrick's team of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office discovered a terrestrial explanation of what occurred. It further states that a large electromagnetic generator requiring heavy concrete supports and 60-foot posts supporting a platform was constructed near the front gate of the Oscar 1 LCF, where it would fire a high-voltage burst of energy, creating an electromagnetic pulse to determine any vulnerabilities to our equipment and missiles. It further states, when activated, this device, placed on a portable platform 60 feet above the facility, would gather power until it glowed, sometimes with a blinding orange light. It would then fire a burst of energy that could resemble lighting. The electromagnetic pulses snaked down cables connected to the bunker where launch commanders like Salas sat, disrupting the guidance systems, disabling the weapons, and haunting the men to this day. But any public leak of the test at the time would have allowed Russia to know that America's nuclear arsenal could be disabled in a first strike. The witnesses were kept in the dark. My response to this fantasy is as follows. I gave an over 2-hour presentation to 2 members of the Arrow team on February 15th, 2023. At the end of my presentation, I asked them if they were going to contact the U.S. Air Force to verify the factual events as I represented them. They replied they would not be doing so because of the lack of the cooperation from the USAF. They never informed me that they had discovered some terrestrial explanation to my incident as stated above. The USAF was certainly aware of the potential damage as a result of EMP from a nearby nuclear explosion, and I and my co-author, James Klotz, wrote about this subject in our book, Fated Giant. In addition, we listed references to EMP studies with supporting statements from members of the Boeing investigation team. We concluded that the EMP testing was not the cause of the missile shutdowns. If this had been the case, it surely would have been reflected in the historical documents and communications with investigators we received from that period. All Minutemen crew members had high security clearances. We had detailed briefings, both classified and unclassified, or any activities in the field that could impact the status of our missile readiness each time we were sent out on alert duties. In 3 years, I was assigned as a missile launch officer at Malmstrom AFB. I was never briefed about any EMP testing on operational missiles. It would have been irresponsible and unthinkable for the USAF to jeopardize the operational status of these weapons by doing such tests, as they were, in part, the basis of our strategic national security, and especially since this time period was during the Cold War, and we were engaged in the Vietnam War, and we had a near nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis only a few years earlier. As stated above, the EMP generator equipment would have involved a prolonged installation process in plain sight of our security team at ground level of our LCF. Those activities would have been reported to us in the Underground Launch Control Center since we were in command of the facility. Our topside personnel never reported to us any such activity. During our incident, our flight security controller expressed extreme fear when reporting to me an object hovering just above the front gate of our LCF. In fact, all the security personnel were very frightened, as we later learned. If there had been some sort of authorized test going on, they would not have experienced such fear. During our incident, our status panel showed an indication of possible incursion into 2 launch facilities, the location of missiles. Security teams were sent to those sites to investigate, but as they approached them, they reported seeing the same type of object hovering around those missiles. They again were so frightened to see them, they requested to go no further and return to the LCF. Mr. Ray Fowler was a manager of electrical systems for the Minutemen I missile systems during the period of the Echo and Oscar flight incidents. He worked for the Sylvania Corp, which was the contractor for those systems. Fowler had employees stationed at the Malmstrom during this period who reported to him details of those incidents, including the reports of UFO activity. According to his affidavit, there was no report to him about conducting EMP testing at the operational sites where missiles were disabled. One of our documents we received from FOIA request was a telex from Strategic Air Command to various Minutemen bases. The original classification of that telex was secret. Subject was loss of strategic alert, Echo Flight, Maelstrom, AFB, and dated March 17, 1967. In the body of this telex, it stated the fact that no apparent reason for the loss of 10 missiles can be readily identified is cause for grave concern to this headquarters. We must have an in-depth analysis to determine cause and corrective action, and we must know as quickly as possible what the impact is to the fleet, if any. Such a statement would not have been made by SAC headquarters if the shutdowns had resulted from EMP testing. Per the SAC request, Boeing established an investigative team. It was headed by Mr. Robert Kaminsky, who had been charged with running the Minutemen troubleshooting team. He contacted me shortly after I went public about my incident. He wrote a long letter in which he stated, the team met with me to report their findings, and it was decided that the final report would have nothing significant in it to explain what happened at E-Flight. There was no technical explanation that could explain the event. There was no mention of EMP testing with respect to this or any other incident. The 2 Boeing engineers requested by name in the SAC telex, Riegert and Dutton, confirmed in the wing history report that electrical power problems were ruled out as a possible cause. According to the Department of Energy, there was no nuclear testing conducted on March 16th or 24th that could have been a source of EMP. There were multiple reports of UFO sightings near a Maelstrom AFB on the evening of March 24th, 1967, as stated in a report by the base operations officer. Other witnesses to those and other sightings could be available to testify under improved witness protection assurances. I and other witnesses are available, willing to testify under oath as to the truth of the above statements. I'm sending this rebuttal to the Wallstreet Journal and ask that they publish it and respond to the rebuttal statements as listed below. Great letter. Great response. Again, not a matter of saying, see, that's it, true. That's his account. That's what happens to UFOs. They shut the thing down. Not the case. What should have been done immediately? Reporting 101. Why wasn't he contacted? If you're going to report this part of the story and you're going to mention Salas, why didn't you reach out to him? Say, hey, this is what Kirkpatrick is saying. This is what Arrow is saying, that they presented this to you. Can you verify that? This is what they're saying it is. They're saying that it's EMP. There's these other things. What say you about this? And we'll have your statement as we're putting this in there. The fact that they didn't comes off more so of an agenda piece, in my opinion. It comes off of like, well, this is what it is. It isn't this because we talked to a bunch of people who said it wasn't. We put it out there and it's BS. So move along. How do you write about this guy, but don't get a quote from this guy? Again, you can make up, you can still present the same exact thing that you were presenting, but then say, well, we spoke to Mr. Salas And he stands by his story and says the following. We still feel that after speaking to Sean Kilpatrick and Mr. Salas, we still feel that this is the evidence points to this, but you have to show this guy's point of view, but you don't. That's questionable. That shows more of an agenda. Like, why are you doing that if you're not going to get everybody involved? They should absolutely publish this and and let this be a response to it. That's just reporting. That's what the news is. You have every right. If you're like, look, I did the investigating on this, and all the stuff that I investigated shows that this is just the government covering things up. There's no aliens. There's none of this. It's just them putting stuff out to throw people off the scent. And these poor bastards back in the late 60s were thrown off of it too. But you got to talk to them. That's questionable. So Lou Elizondo also responded, to which he says, the absurdity of the Wallstreet Journal article is not only a disingenuous piece, it appears to be well orchestrated by the usual players in DOD. This is shameful, furthermore, bugging the credibility of military whistleblowers and eyewitnesses over decades to support the narrative of a few who only admit they were aware of deception campaign against the American people. Conquer and present as anti-democratic in my opinion. I am also aware that part 2 of the article will work hard to try and discredit others, including me, in order to convince you, the people, that this topic is not worth looking into. Personally, I think the DOD just opened a whole new can of worms for itself if it approved these statements being made. So there's more follow-up because more people were saying, wait a minute, hold on. And a lot of the players that they mentioned, that it looked very similar to what they tried to do. Remember, and I bring it up on this show quite often, when they released that piece, when they had all their reporters that they just wanted their reporters there and nobody else, that there was no Ross Coulthart there was no Jeremy Corbell. It was just the DOD and Arrow never found anything. Okay, let's stop talking about this. It seems to be one of those pieces again. And the same type of thing seems to be happening here. But now you're going to get more people speaking out about it and News Nation covering it. And here is Ross Coulthart and Ryan Graves discussing the article itself.
I'll start with you. You said on X this is a really one-sided piece in the Wallstreet Journal. You said it does nothing to account for the near-daily reality of sightings that pilots, service members, and regular folks witness. But couldn't both be true? Couldn't you really be seeing something? And couldn't there also be this incredible, long-standing Pentagon disinformation campaign?
Well, I think that's exactly right. And that's the other side of the story. But, you know, the base core presumption that this whole issue is caused from some in-briefings that were done in a hazing fashion in order to, well, I'm not really sure why, other than to potentially confuse secret technology. But that's not where this originates from. This originates from eyewitnesses that are spotting things, sometimes on the ground, often in the sky, that is very hard to explain. And whether that leads to, you know, an alien origin or something else, I don't frankly know. But the origin of this isn't a mythology that was spread across military individuals. Now, that might have been leveraged in order to take advantage of the confusion that was present from aviators and military folks that were witnessing these encounters. But no, I would disagree that they are the core progeny of this issue.
Yeah, you saw what you saw. You weren't fed some fake disinformation from somebody at the Pentagon. You saw what you saw.
Exactly. And there's thousands of instances of service members and regular people having similar experiences that can't be chalked up to simply disinformation coming from the Pentagon.
Okay.
But it does highlight a very important issue, I think, which is that if this is going on, this is basically a deception campaign against the American public, which I'm very confident that Congress is not read into.
All right, Ross, what do you make of all this, Ross?
Good evening, Elizabeth. I agree with Ryan. I think the hilarious thing about this, it's such a joke, this Wall Street Journal article, because it's effectively admitting what we've known for years, which is that there are people, gatekeepers to this secret about this legacy UAP program, who have been lying to and deceiving the American public for years. And now it's official from one of the most senior people who served as the person in charge of investigating UAPs. Put simply, his explanation makes no sense. The idea that this would just be part of a hazing ritual to try and encourage people to believe in aliens as a cover for some secret US stealth program, it really doesn't make a lot of sense. We've known for years that disinformation is being used and that UFOs are often used as cover. But that doesn't explain the first-hand witnesses who say they have seen craft and that they have direct knowledge of a UAP program.
Yeah, I guess Ryan, what I don't get is, I get that they want to keep their stealth fighter jet at Area 51 a secret. I'm not sure how spreading disinformation about UFOs accomplishes that by going to the local bars and spreading these pictures and rumors. How does that accomplish that?
I mean, perhaps that had some effect in the 50s or 60s, but I think in the modern era, they're just going to be drumming up more interest than fear. So no, I don't think it's a very effective tactic. And I frankly can't really accept that would be a widespread implementation technique that would be used. When a secret program such as a SAT program or a top secret program is exposed, there's very clear procedures of what's done as far as reading potential people in and providing them a debrief of what they experienced so they know the procedures moving forward.
Yeah.
There's not an official policy to read people into a fake UAP program to confuse them.
Ross, the Wall Street Journal article alleges that some of the officers who fell victim to this hazing ritual, who were being fed fake information, were told that the program they were joining was called Yankee Blue and that it was part of an effort to reverse engineer technology on the craft. I gotta be honest, this sounds a lot like what David Grush told you and me in his interviews after he blew the whistle.
Look, it's quite clear, Elizabeth, that someone in the Pentagon has tailored what is quite clearly deliberate disinformation just to confuse the public. One of the other things they've done in this story that the Wall Street Journal aired without any kind of sensible investigation was claims that an electromagnetic pulse test weapon was used against an active thermonuclear missile site in 1967. And they do this to try and explain away what Bob Salas, a captain in the Air Force at the time, describes he saw, which was a missile being shut down by a UAP. And the idea that the US Air Force would sanction the use of an electromagnetic pulse to essentially test a weapon against an active thermonuclear missile, it's beyond belief. It's so ridiculous, it's absurd.
Yeah, Ryan, you think we're obviously Congress, there's a whole committee on UFOs that's been established because they're trying to investigate what the secrets are. Apparently, there will be another report coming from the Pentagon out about this disinformation campaign. This is really going to sound the alarm on that committee, what I would bet. You testified before it.
Well, I did not testify before the new task force that has been stood up, but I believe that this is going to provide them a lot of ammunition to look into some of these claims, which ideally will give them more opportunities to find people that they can speak to determine if this is true or not, and whether the American people have been deceived, even in a small part.
See, but this is my point. Like, this is my point. Like, if you're going to write these articles, like an article like this, again, how do you make the same mistakes? How do you not have people and go, look, so we are so confident that our reporting and our investigation of what we found here is accurate. We're going to reach out to Orion Graves, who saw this thing, and say, hey, this is what they say it is. What's your comment on that? It does seem very one-sided because, again, you do not have to go away from your narrative. But if you only have, this is what I said when I first read it, Sean Kirkpatrick as the one who's Sean Kirkpatrick said it, and we heard some other things from other people. So if he said it again, remember we said it last time, nothing to see here? Doesn't add up. I can't believe it. And the idea of it, the thought of it, of the misinformation, as Ross Kohler said, it's been out there. That I believe. But Ryan Graves also makes a great point. They're pretty much essentially saying, yeah, the government is lying to you and has been. So if it's not about aliens, they have all this other secret stuff. But because it's national security, we should be okay with it. We should be okay that they're lying about aliens and coming up with it and fooling some of our people who are working for the military. We should be cool with that. It's not aliens, though. The other side of it, where you could look at it, you can go, wait a minute. Are people getting too close? Is it getting closer and closer? Is that what this is? Is that why they are saying, hey, we need another article. We need something big here. You got to discredit these people. Because now the second part is coming out about Lou, and we'll cover that. We'll see how and other people. And they're going to reach out and they're going to basically take shots at the people that are in the forefront. There's a lot. This is juicy. I thought this was going to be a 5-minute video. It's almost an hour. So I ask you guys, what do you make of all of this? What are your thoughts on it? What are your thoughts on the article? All right, do you believe that it's another one of these things? It's another Sean Kirkpatrick attempt? Hey, Arrow and DOD going, we got to shut this thing down. Here's the Wallstreet Journal. You guys are credible enough. Here's what you say this is. Go. Is it a Klippenstein type thing? Or is it legit? No, look, this is technology. This is what those drones were. This is what these other things were. And they've been lying to people and saying it was aliens and stuff. And that's what we have a very disingenuous government general who's admitting it, that they are not honest with the American people. They are not honest in general. They've done some really shady shit, and now they're admitting to it. I don't know. What do you say? Put your thoughts in there. Let me know. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. I appreciate you being here. Yeah, lots to talk about. So thanks again, and we'll see you soon. Bye.